Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So today's video might get somewhat spicy and contain some colorful language. I am recording this all off the cuff without a script, therefore I do myself not know exactly how colorful I will get. However, if you are of more sensitive disposition, I advise searching up some wombat videos, maybe baby kittens. And you can definitely check out quokkas. They are like the internet's happiest animal or best selfie animal, something like that. They're definitely really adorable. Check them out. But if you are still here and if you are prepared to have your ears subjected to some colorful language, then I do have a story to tell you. Now, everything that I will say in this video obviously is my opinion, and I'm not insisting that my opinion has inherently any more value than yours if yours is different. I am, however, going to say what I think about the issues that I do care about, and in this case do not like so very much. If you do like what Kabam is currently doing with the champion abilities, then that's fine. Your opinion, you can drop a comment, stay respectful, and I have absolutely no problem with that. In fact, I encourage it. I always look forward to different points of view, so long as it isn't a derogative form of communication. That being said, I do have a story to tell you, and the story, unfortunately, is of creative bankruptcy, greed, and laziness that has infested Kabam. And it had been happening for a while. We just didn't catch up on it, and it really wasn't on as broad of a scale. The last time that we did notice it properly was with Alliance War defensive tactics, where the latest defensive tactic that we do have to use, we don't have a choice anymore, is where if opponent evades, they gain a chunk of power. If you stop their evade, they still gain a chunk of power of equal or larger amount. That obviously happens if you only use slow debuff, which is primarily meant to stop opponents from evading. So we can see what is happening there exactly. So you are still allowed to stop opponents from evading, except with slow. That means you cannot really use those champions and those abilities there anymore. But that's fine. You can deal with that. There are other options. There are plenty of options, like True Strike, True Accuracy, and a few others, like Ability Accuracy Reduction, for instance. Or hitting opponent while they're stunned. But as we are talking about stuff like True Strike, True Accuracy, and Ability Accuracy Reduction, coincidentally, we have arrived to Penny Parker, which is kind of like the latest spit in the face of every summoner. And don't get me wrong, I am excited for Penny Parker offensively. I am excited for her animation. She does seem to have awesome synergies, and I'm interested in getting the champion. Oh, defensively though, this is the lowest of low cheap shots that I have seen Kabam take with any champion design so far, because it effectively says your old champions are not good enough and they do not work anymore. Even though their abilities literally word for word, letter for letter, are designed to counter the abilities that this champion has, Kabam has decided that they do not count. More than likely they do not count because they can't really make money of them anymore, and they will gracefully in a month or two release a new total strike that ignores evade, auto block, and miss, and cannot be prevented, or some shit like that they're gonna end up making a ton of money. Now, there is also the argument that Kabam has always done that. Kabam has always created a problem and released a counter. But there is a huge difference, because Kabam has never ever in past said that your old abilities that counter this champion don't work. Here is the huge difference. This is the laziest shit ever. This is what that little asshole son of a bitch used to do as a child when we were playing tag or whatever other game, and he was about to lose, and they randomly start changing the rules and making the rules up as they go along. Like if you're playing tag with him and you're about to tag him, he immediately tells stop. You can't tag me because you're wearing a red shirt and the sun is in that direction and the wind is too strong or some shit like that. They just start making a random shit up that has nothing to do with anything in order to tell you why you're about to lose. This is what Kabam is doing right now. Kabam is that little asshole of a child, where you have a champion who has ability set, and you have a champion who would counter that ability set, but they say that it doesn't count. Why? Fuck knows why, because they said so. So here is the biggest problem that I have with this. And that's the laziness and creative bankruptcy. Now imagine similar situation, but let's talk about damage or time effects. So imagine Morningstar, champion that inflicts bleed on opponent when you strike them. In order to counter that bleed, obviously you bring in a bleed immune champion primarily. Makes sense, that is how the game's supposed to function. But now imagine if 2021 Kabam releases Morningstar 3.0. And it also says, when struck, inflict bleed upon opponent. Bleed immunity is bypassed, or bleed immunity does not work. Or this bleed bypasses bleed immunity. Some shit like that. This is what Kabam's doing right now. This is exactly the same shit. Whereas we have our old champions that would work to counter this champion, but they don't, only because Kabam said that those abilities don't work. So yeah, imagine you're fighting Abomination. Whenever you strike Abomination, you have a chance to get poisoned. Kabam releases a new Abomination saying whenever you're striking Abomination, opponents have a chance to get poisoned, and poison immunity does not prevent this poison. And there is an easy workaround that, obviously, when we're talking about bleed and poison. Just put on a different damage or time effect. And Kabam did so. Kabam made Rapture debuff, and that is exactly the difference here. Kabam had obviously a lot less creative capacity needed to come up with the Rapture debuff, which is a new interesting debuff type that nobody is immune to at the moment in the game. Eventually somebody is going to get released that is immune to Raptures, but so far in the game we do not have a single Rapture immune champion, and if we need to deal with Rapture, then we need to deal with the debuff itself or the damage itself. But we have like alternate ways around it, but there are no champions that are immune to it. Eventually we will. Right. And why is it different? Why is it different than this thing? Because somebody actually had to work their brain, figure out, and I don't know, a name, an icon, a symbol for Rapture. They figured out what is going to be different for Rapture than other damage or time effects. That is the fact that it is tied to physical damage. And that is making the game better, because that is introducing something new, that is putting the work in by designer, and that is just expanding the game. There are more interactions, more champions, more cool things happening, and that is how the game grows, and that is how the game gets better. But this situation right here is the situation that I described to you guys before. Instead of somebody actually putting in work and creating something new, a new mechanic or a new ability set or new anything, they just took the easy, lazy way out, and that they said that your abilities don't count. So this would be the case where Guillotine inflicts bleed on an opponent that bypasses bleed immunity, for example. And that is a massive difference. Especially when we put it in a bigger context, where obviously with Penny Parker happens to auto block pretty much guaranteed. On top of that, it gives you unavoidable power burn damage. You can't heavy attack. Basically, she's going to be a nightmare, right? There are probably going to be like Magneto and Quake that can counter it, and that's about it. But I can bet my bottom dollar that within next year, we're going to have a Cosmic Champion or something else that bypasses all of this shit, which Kabam is going to milk. And again, I don't mind paying Kabam for their product. I like this game, I play this game, I willingly spend money on this game. If you don't, that is perfectly fine. You're still paying Kabam with your time and effort. But The nasty difference when they're not improving the game, when they're making more shit, where they're randomly discounting champion abilities because they do not have the creative prowess to create anything new to solve the problem, and they still will want your money. I'm telling you, there's gonna be some total strike, or there's gonna be a champion that is randomly unblockable against tech champions or shit like that. Now, right now, as it's intended, you're meant to be basically triggering the auto block, and you're meant to be getting power burned, and you're meant to be using champions that are immune to power burn, such as Venom Pole after buff, such as King Groot after buff, such as Venom, and a handful of other cosmic champions. The problem with that is that Kabam says these bunch of shittier cosmic champions are going to work, but these champions that should counter this ability better will not. Why those champions will not work? Because we told you so. Because we couldn't figure out why they wouldn't work. That's why we just cheated. We amended the rules. Currently, we have Unstoppable, Evade, Unblockable, and Miss mechanic. Technically, you can kind of put in an Unblockable as well, but yeah. So we have Unstoppable, Miss, Evade, Auto Block. Yes. Those are the mechanics that we have at our disposal to manage and alter the fight. So instead of creating a new one, like Kabam was trying to add route to the game, or route, or whatever it is called, where basically none of the you couldn't move around or something like that. So instead of trying to create something, instead of making the game better, they chose to make it worse. They chose to arbitrarily discount some champions from the race here. And if that is not being creatively bankrupt, unable to innovate, unable to improve, then I don't know what is. And this is excellent example of what to do if you want your game to die. When you stop innovating, when you stop improving, and you start taking easy ways out, because something is hard, nobody's gonna like that. Nobody's gonna respect that. I can genuinely tell you guys, I hope I never see this kind of bullshit in a single champion's ability description ever again. In fact, I hope that line there gets removed immediately. And that is not because I think that I'm gonna have trouble dealing with Penny Parker. And no shit. I am confident in myself playing this game that I will find a way and I will figure ways around it, and maybe it can take a revive or whatever. I also know for a fact that eventually Kabam is going to make it easier for us, because they're going to have to sell us a champion that just destroys Penny Parker. But meanwhile, I know that we're going to figure a way around it. It's not going to be like wherever we see Penny Parker, that's it. It's a roadblock. It's undoable fight. We will have ways to deal with this fight. That's not the question here. She's going to be annoying. She's going to be tricky for a long time. A lot of people are going to complain about her. A lot of people are going to have issues fighting her. But that is not even the problem. I encourage Kabam to make interesting, tricky champions to fight against. Why not? That ultimately improves the game. What I don't encourage them to do is to randomly take the easy, cheap way out. Randomly, this is not much better than saying these 10 champions cannot be used fighting against Penny Parker, because we couldn't figure out a way how she wouldn't get destroyed by them. That is effectively what it is. That is their admission of defeat, and that is their MO recently. Putting that true sense or whatever node on Alliance War mini boss island is exactly the same thing. They cannot figure out a way how to counter Quake and Ghost, so they're just nuking down an entire subset of champions because they can't come up with anything better. And that is exactly what's happening here, where they cannot figure out a good defensive ability kit that a lot of champions in the game wouldn't absolutely destroy. Therefore, they're just adding an ability that your abilities do not count. But again, keep in mind that there will be a new ability that does effectively the same thing on a new champion that will be in Cavalier crystals that will count. There will inevitably be a counter to this champion that will try to squeeze money that they have not earned. If you want to get money from me, then at least pretend to put some effort in. Like, this is honestly not much better of, yeah, this bleed bypasses bleed immunity, this poison bypasses poison immunity. This unstoppable cannot be slowed. That is the kind of shit where we're heading right now. This evade cannot be prevented. Shit. And I'm not even the only one who thinks like that. Obviously, I'm the one that uses more colorful language, but I will showcase to you guys a person who I actually listen to often and respect. And I actually lurked in his stream yesterday from Cam on Twitter. So let's read out his tweet before I finish. I can go on and speculating on how good or bad Penny in 2099 are going to be based on the deep dives. In fact, I did do just that live. You can catch the VOD. There's something else I'd like to talk about instead. Limited design space. He says it's limited design space. I'm saying it's them being creatively bankrupt. I touched on this during my stream to summarize both of the upcoming champs have abilities that counter other abilities that were deciphered to counter a third set of abilities. Confused yet? Of course. Penny, for example, counters True Strike, True Accuracy, and True Sense. Penny also, interestingly, happens to have access to Auto Block that happens to be immune to ability accuracy modification and can't be bypassed using heavies, leaving you with very few counters. I don't have a problem with defensive champs that have few counters. Exactly. Nobody does. Nobody should. I do, however, find it indicative of a bigger problem that a tech champion like Penny is going to now counter abilities commonly held by cosmic champions that were designed to counter Auto Block. Exactly. That, to me, is a sign of devs running out of design space. That, to me, is a sign of devs being creatively bankrupt or lazy. Auto block, evade, miss, unstoppable, and unblockable. That's the list of combat manipulating abilities that we have seen introduced to the game since its inception. And it's without that list expanding, we're just going to see devs building layers of complexity instead. And layer designs are confusing. Ability A counters B except for when B is paired with C, but A can bypass C if it's paired with D. That's basically currently what's happening. My knowledge of kit design is still very limited, but even as a player, I don't love seeing these layers. This is why I hope to see new mechanics getting added to the game sooner than later. I know that the initial reception to Root, for example, wasn't the most positive, but I'd honestly much rather deal with Root and the counter to Root than how to decipher these layers. This is exactly the comparison that I said basically as well, and I gave where we have Rapture as a new damage over time debuff, but we don't have new Morningstar that inflicts bleed but bypasses bleed immunity. Game mechanics that impact combat in a game as old as MCOC are always going to be divisive and jarring to get used to. If we want our 7-year-old game to ever turn 15, we need to give designers space to breathe, in my opinion. There you go. So that is basically the same thing that I tried to say, just, well, a lot more tame, shall we say it? And that is exactly the problem here. This is a shortcut to making sure that this game dies very quickly. It really, really is. You absolutely cannot do shit like that. Cannot randomly discount huge portion of the champions that already exist in a game just because you are unable to figure out how to make a champion a good defensive, I don't know, struggle. You need inspiration, I don't know, take a week off, go on holiday, visit zoo or whatever else, do whatever else you have to do, but at least try and come up with something new rather than this lazy, uninspired, cheap, underhanded bullshit that we see here. Don't be that cunt of a motherfucker child that cannot take losing and that just starts amending rules in the middle of a game. That's it. Don't be that cunt. Most importantly, perhaps, don't pretend that it's okay. As a viewer, as a person watching this video right now, don't pretend that you like this, and don't pretend that it's okay. Anyhow, that is it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you think, and go flip a bird in General Kabam's direction for doing this stupid thing. See ya. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about